But just so we can start to kick off on time, I just wanted to introduce myself. So my name's Jane, and I work for Primary Industries Education Foundation Australia. And we're so grateful to have you all joining us today for this very special Careers Week panel. So before we kick off, I would just like to acknowledge the country from which I'm speaking to you today, Wathaurong country, and I'd like to pay my respects to our elders past, present and emerging. As I said before, the session's going to be recorded, so a little bit of housekeeping would just be, while our panelists are speaking today, if you wouldn't mind keeping microphones just switched off. And then at the end of the session, we'll have a time for a bit of Q&A. So mics can come back on then, or you're welcome to, throughout the session, pop any questions you might have in the chat box, and then we can ask those to our panelists as well. I'm sure that we won't be too far away with getting things rolling. I did just touch base with our other panelists, so hopefully we'll be able to kick off very soon. Thank you so much for all making it along, particularly to our panelists. Thank you for them. Yes, here we are, Paul. All right. So what we might do once Paul's in and settled is I'll just ask each of our panelists to introduce themselves and give us a bit of an overview about their current role, and so what a day in their life looks like and how they ended up in the position that they're currently in. Whoop. Right, I do believe Paul is almost here. Let me just double check. There we go, we're looking good. If you're happy to do so, Joel, I might get you to start just by giving us a bit of an intro to who you are, what you do, and how you ended up in the position that you're in at the moment.
Yep, sure. So, yeah, I'm Joel Tierney. I'm the Environment and Sustainability Officer for CANEGROWERS Cairns region. And a large part of that role is being the local BMP facilitator. So, as part of that, I help growers achieve the industry's best Smart Cane Best Practice Management Program accreditation. And also another role that takes up a fair bit of my time is I'm currently the project coordinator for the Great Barrier Reef Foundation's Russell Mulgrave Water Quality Project. And both of these roles involve a lot of grower engagement, sort of one-on-one engagement with growers and working with other stakeholders within the industry and catchment groups and things. To end up in this role, I did a Bachelor of Environmental Science part-time through Central Queensland Uni, whilst working in jobs that sort of aligned with what I was studying. So the idea there was to get that sort of on-ground experience whilst sort of doing the theory or the study side of it as well. So hoping that would help progress career pathways a bit more by both having the piece of paper qualification plus the experience. I decided to work in the sugar industry because I'd grown up around the region, always sort of mucked around on farms growing up and had family friends that have had farms and that, and it's a pretty important part of the region, I believe, and I wanted to get involved, and especially with the BMP sort of focus in this job to try and help promote some of the good stuff growers do, the innovations and technology adoption to the wider community where I can as well.
That's awesome. Thanks for that, Joel. That's really fantastic. Would you mind, just before we pass over to James, just giving us a quick, what is BMP for those people that may not know?
Right. So BMP is the Smart Cane BMP, or Best Management Practice Program, which is industry developed. So, and growers gain accreditation by undergoing 3 core modules. So soil health, nutrient management, irrigation and drainage is the other core module, and weed, pest and disease. So I work with the grower to sort of help him with his records and everything to get all the information ready to undertake a third-party independent audit, which then once that's verified, they get in the program. So I think that's a great way to show the wider community all the good things growers are doing, how they're sort of using sustainable farming practices and just being general environmental stewardship of the land. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that, Joel. That's fantastic. Now, James, I might pass to you. Would you just mind giving us a bit of an intro to who you are, where you are, and what you do? and how you got into that position.
Hi there, I'm James Oldacre, currently living in Cairns. I started off, I went to agricultural college down in Victoria. I think I kind of always wanted to do farming because really enjoyed the outdoors. And then I was lucky enough, I actually got a position where Paul works at Sugar Research Australia, and managed to get a really good introduction to the industry there. And then through the contacts and friends I made through that, managed to get a lease on a farm, which was right near Cairns, which was luckily because it was just convenient because it was near the job and everything like that. And then recently I just purchased another farm near Babinda. So yeah, really, really enjoying it so far. Yeah, it's good. So I'm happy to be farming, which is good.
Awesome. Now, James, just before I pass over to Paul, we've had this conversation before, but I think it's something that's worthwhile sharing with the kids in Louise's class today. How did you get into purchasing a farm? Obviously, it's not a super attainable thing for a lot of young people. How did that happen for you?
Yeah, so as I said, definitely was first getting a good introduction to the industry where Paul works. So I got to really learn the ins and outs and what would be difficult, and really got to learn the major costs firsthand from other growers and speaking to them. And yeah, as I say, through making those contacts and those good relationships is when I managed to get just make the connection to eventually get a lease on a farm, which was a much cheaper start off. And the sugar price is actually quite low at the moment, so nobody else actually really wanted the farm at the time. And it was a good time to jump into it. And then after I started leasing that for a few years, the price went up a bit, and my production picked up a bit, and I was then ready to purchase another farm. So yeah, but yeah, it can be a big investment at the start, so you've got to be quite careful how deep you dive in head first at the start.
That's awesome. Thank you so much for sharing. All right, Paul, I'm going to pass over to you. Would you mind giving us a bit of an intro to who you are, where you work, and how you made it into that position? Oops, sorry, you're just on mute, Paul. It's a never-ending battle. There we go.
Rookie error. Sorry about that. Hello, everyone. My name's Paul Calcino. I'm the District Delivery Officer working at Sugar Research Australia. So just near Gordonvale, for those of you who know the area. My role, I guess, is somewhere in between the researcher and the grower. A lot of my role involves sharing sort of the most up-to-date information that's been researched or recently been found out, I suppose, with the growers, and helping them to basically increase productivity as best they can, making everything more profitable. Is a large aim of my role. Some of the things that I do is a lot of grower engagement, setup, monitoring trials, soil sampling for diseases or nutritional requirements, data collection, organising industry events. We recently just had a big field day here, which was probably the biggest event for the year for our organisation, and I was played a large role in that. Why or how did I get here? I did an honours degree in environmental management. I've got a bit of an interesting path to get here. I finished school. I didn't go to university for about 5 years. I did a range of other things, not so related to cane, a lot of travel and whatnot, and then decided I wanted to go to university. So did an environmental degree. And I'd also done a couple of seasons as a farmhand back in my 20-year-old days. And I just always kind of wanted to come back to Cairns, and I was always interested in agriculture. My father always worked in the sugarcane industry, and it's just the largest agricultural crop that there is up around this area. So by working in it, you're sort of working with a broad spectrum of the people in the community, and
That's awesome.
always been a bit interested in it.
Yeah. Now, Paul, I know that you mentioned about work experience and the work experience that you had. Could you maybe just elaborate a little bit more on the way that work experience helped you into the path that you're currently in, what work experience you may have had, and how that really, I guess, maybe gave you skills or experience that you now use today?
For sure. Yep. And I just realised I left out a critical part of how I got to where I am. So I'll just backtrack for a moment. Before I got this role, I actually did a traineeship with the Queensland Farmers Federation, QFF. And I've done, as you just touched on, I've done work experience for a range of other roles, which I always find extremely helpful for anyone that's listening and not 100% sure about what they want to do. It's a very good way to find out what a job actually entails as opposed to what it just says on paper. And you might work for free for a week or two, but you might save yourself a year or two of working at a job that you realize isn't the one that you want. But yeah, so in a way, it was a paid traineeship, so it wasn't just work experience. But the Queensland Farmers Federation do a very good traineeship every year in agriculture. So if anyone hears about that, I'd highly recommend it. And that got me a position here at SRA, which was supposed to be for 12 months, but after 6 months, I got offered the role where I am now.
Awesome. Thanks heaps for that, Paul. All right, I'm going to go around the circle again, and I'm just going to ask everyone to give me a bit of an indication of what skills you find are the most important to be successful in your role or in your position. So I might start with you again, Joel, if that's okay.
Yep, all good. So I think skills probably relate to a lot of people's positions in agriculture, but I think being able to be flexible is probably a main one, because sugarcane industry and agriculture in general is sort of pretty well dictated by weather and rainfall and these sorts of things, which everyone has to work around. So being able to be flexible and try and catch up with growers when they've got the time, when it's too wet for them to be doing other things like that is pretty important. Otherwise, when the sun's out and it's fine weather, you'll have trouble getting people who want to stop what they're doing to talk to you. Time management leading off that is pretty important as well. And so being seasonal crop, there's different priorities throughout the year, planting, harvesting, all that sort of stuff. So trying to plan different events and grower engagement opportunities around those peak times is pretty important as well. And probably being able to collaborate, because there's a lot of different stakeholders within the industry, from growers to like Paul at SRA, cane growers and the millers and that. So I think there's always collaborating with other organisations, and probably like from James and other growers' points of view too, it's pretty important that you're getting the information from the appropriate person. So if I was talking to James and he needs something else, it's good to know what Paul's priorities are, so I can point them in the right direction to get the best value for their time.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you heaps for that, Joel. All right, James, I might pass to you again, just thinking about the skills that are most crucial for your success.
Sure. Most crucial for me was probably what I learned at agricultural college, learning how to do a budget. So basically just learning how to sum up all your costs, basically identify all your costs, and trying to calculate a profit margin. So just trying to work that out as accurately as you can. So just your fertilizer costs, your planting costs, your harvesting, all those sorts of things, your spraying costs, and adding them up and seeing how much how much of a good yield you need to get to actually make a decent return to pay off your debts. Secondly, after that, I would say is getting the real experience. Just so, because you can learn a lot at uni and that, but sometimes you can make things look really good on paper, but until you're actually out in the field and trying to get things done yourself, there's a lot of things you don't budget for, like for exactly how long it takes to get things done, and just the time it may take and those sorts of things. The other thing was just extra skills I learned by working in the industry first. Was like I learned a lot about the agronomy side of things where I worked with Paul. So just how to just learning about the soil and the best ways to sort of alleviate those constraints. And then something else that would have been really handy is to learn a bit about the mechanical side, which is something I'm not very good at. I'm trying to watch things on YouTube and stuff on how to fix old tractors and stuff, because when you start out, you can't really afford all the new equipment. So trying to fix things can take a while, and it's really expensive to get a mechanic out to work there for 2 days just to open up a tractor or whatever. So mechanical skills would have been handy, but if you're good at one thing or the other, there's people like Paul that can help you out on the other side or whatever. There is help out there. But yeah, definitely to begin with, the learning how to just calculate all your costs is probably the most important, I would say. Yeah.
Awesome. Once you've finished calculating all your costs, you can teach me how to budget, James, because I certainly just didn't have my head around it. All right, Paul, I might pass over to you now if you wouldn't mind just sharing your ideas about the skills that are most crucial for your success in your role.
Yeah, for sure. I strongly agree with what Joel and James have already said, and they've taken a few of my points already. But yeah, definitely agree. But a few others, or just to elaborate on some of them, I'd say communication skills or interpersonal skills are crucial in my role. You work with all sorts of people. I've been lucky enough to work with both James and Joel. Yeah, the young fellas compared to the rest of the sugarcane industry. So you've got a whole range of ages, people with different backgrounds and whatnot. People have different ideas and different views. So I think that's a key one. Physical fitness is, I know James didn't mention that one, but I think in your role, James, that's pretty crucial as well. But I find that yeah, pretty important, because I spend a lot of time out in the sun, especially if you're doing sampling or yeah, just out collecting data. It's pretty crucial. Basic computer skills, also very handy. I suppose everyone that's listening to this at home or at school is going to be across those with your basic Excel, PowerPoint, and whatnot. But yeah, Excel in particular comes in handy. So if you've got a good grasp of that, you've already got a head start. Joel already mentioned it as well, but the flexibility, we're very much dictated by what the weather tells us we're going to do. And as he said, if the weather's good, people will be out doing what they need to get done, not necessarily what you want to do at that very moment in time, which is fair enough, because it's probably going to rain sooner rather than later, and they'll be held up, and you'll be able to catch them then. And probably the last one that hasn't been touched on yet is just some data analysis skills. That's very handy. It's not one that everybody has. It sort of depends on if it's your cup of tea. Personally, it's not my favorite thing in the world, but it is extremely handy. So I'd highly recommend, if anyone's going into this sort of a role, that they do try and get at least a basic understanding of how to do some data analysis and statistics.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you so much for that, Paul. That was very comprehensive. That's awesome. All right, we might have a think about now, and for all the students listening, this is a very exciting point that I got to speak to all three of our panelists about during our catch-ups prior to the session, but about technology and the way that that's enhancing their role. So there's obviously a lot of tech in the sugar industry, and all three of our panelists have got very different perspectives or very different insights in the way that it's being used. So it's really exciting to hear about their insights. So Joel, I might just get you to share a bit about the tech that you find interesting or exciting or really helpful in your role.
Yep. One thing that I think is probably going to be pretty big into the future and a pretty exciting thing most people get excited about, drones in general, but I think spray drones for the sugar industry and agriculture in general is probably going to be a big thing into the future. There's be a lot of potential productivity and profitability gains to be made there when used effectively and efficiently, I think. And like most technology at the moment, it's probably still a little bit too dear for a lot of people to really gain traction with. But I think over time, as that becomes more affordable for growers and the industry in general, I think there'll be a fair uptake of that going forwards. Yeah.
Awesome. Thanks for that, Joel. What about you, James? What do you reckon?
Yeah, we've been making small improvements along the way. I think actually with the cane industry, a lot of the ways we farming is still actually the same ways we started doing it. We're still doing it the same way we were doing it sort of 20 to 30 years ago. Just a lot of the machinery's just gotten a bit bigger and better. So we do still have a bit of catching up to do. Obviously, the small things like our sprays are getting more accurate, and there's variable rate in the fertilizer, so you can put out more where you need it and those sorts of things. So those are a bit of a cost saver. And yeah, like a big thing is as Joel said, is probably the drones, but they haven't quite come into effect in the cane industry just yet. A lot of our cane needs to sort of be sprayed sort of under the canopy, which obviously the drone can't get there. And also, I don't know, and Paul might be able to elaborate on it, but I think one of in the grains industry, I think the drones are selecting the weeds sort of because the crop is quite often brown, is off the color, and they're selecting the green, whereas the cane is very green as well. So I don't know how they're differentiating that. And also the cane looks very similar to a grass, which is what we're trying to spray as well. So they haven't quite been found an effective way to introduce them just yet, but when they do come, they will make a big difference, because like a new tractor can be anywhere between 100 or 80 grand or plus or whatever, but they're really expensive, whereas a drone might only be sort of 10 to 15 grand. So hopefully they do come into effect to make things a bit cheaper for us. But yeah.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you for that, James. Paul, would you have any more or any insights into how they're managing those challenges and any other technology that's really beneficial for you?
Well, shame I've gone third, Joel. You've got the same ideas as me. I am really excited about drone technology, and that's the one that I'm probably working more closely with at the moment. We've got a trial tomorrow. We've got 4 trials getting sprayed with a spray drone actually in the morning. But maybe just a little bit more information on it that hasn't been said yet. There's actually a massive shortage of people that can do the work with drones at the moment. So it's potentially something that's worth looking at, where you can be in agriculture and provide a really good service to people going forward as the technology improves. As an example, we've got a bloke coming from Townsville, which is a good 4 hours from where we are. And there's only one other person that I know of locally that could do the job otherwise. So yeah, it's exciting, because last year, for instance, the largest drone payload that I was aware of was a 20-litre spray tank. This year, that same person has bought the latest drone, and it's a 40-litre spray tank. So things are increasing very rapidly. Like James said, there's still limitations in what they're able to identify as things look really similar, but they are capable of putting out different chemicals like growth regulators, which just need to spray across the canopy of cane, for example. Or if you've got vines and the cane's too big for tractors to get across, that's where you've got the option of using drones to spray your vines, for instance, because they'll take over the top of the canopy. So while it's not a different one, just a few other points that might be of interest.
Yeah, very much so. It's very interesting.
Improving it, tracking speed. So in another couple of years, I think they'll be spraying much larger amounts with longer battery lives, and I think we're going to see more and more of them in the industry.
Yeah, definitely. And you posed a good point in the sense that these roles are ones that are very up and coming. So at the moment, there's only 2 people that have the capacity to, manage these drones, whereas when the students that are listening today are finishing high school, they're going to be much more prevalent.
Definitely. I'd be very surprised if they weren't.
Yeah, it's fantastic. It's really exciting that those opportunities are coming. When I finished high school, I remember a teacher saying that most of the jobs that you will do in your lifetime don't even exist yet, and it's such a true thing. All the innovations in technology, there's so many exciting opportunities that you don't even know about yet. On that note, I will switch it up because I don't want to leave you last again, Paul. I might ask you to share with us, what does sustainability look like in your role, and do you feel like you're having an impact on improved sustainability within the industry?
Yeah, so I think there's a couple of aspects to sustainability. One we hear about a lot is the environmental side of things, and the other crucial one is the sustainability of the business, which is the cane farm and the cane farmer making enough money to stay in business and turn a profit. To me, they are completely linked. You can't have one without the other. What my role largely entails is looking at the farmers' growing side of things. And I think that if I can address that, and if I can make or help growers to be as profitable as they potentially can be, from that flows on everything else, like having enough funds in your bank to make the improvements on farm that might improve your environmental impacts. Further on, it helps the sustainability of the communities that it supports, keeps people employed. It keeps everyone ticking along, I suppose. But yeah, environmental sustainability is a crucial one. We're not going to stop hearing about that anytime soon, and nor should we. It's a very important thing. But if we can focus not solely on that as the be all and end all, but focus on people being able to have successful businesses so they can keep putting food on the table and improving their farming practices and doing everything they can, I think we're going to see all the outcomes that we want to see. On top of that, a lot of growers are already doing fantastic practices. They've made a lot of changes, especially with the BMP that Joel's been talking about in recent years, or actually spanning back a little way now. But yeah, that's about all I've got for sustainability.
Yeah, that's awesome, Paul, and like a very rounded view. I know that in the senior syllabus of agriculture, students learn about the social sustainability along with the environmental sustainability. So yeah, that's that all-encompassing side of things. That's awesome. James, I might pass over to you if that's all right.
Sure. Yeah, for sustainability, for me, probably also again came from my ag college, just learning how to do those farm practices as cheaply and efficiently as possible, and ways to sort of improve your soil health as you do it. For example, like now, instead of deep ripping the whole field, we're trying to sort of do like a zonal rip. So you're sort of just ripping either side of the bed to alleviate the compaction. And yeah, just getting accurate with your fertilizer and your sprays, so you're not putting on too much, so anything's running off into the environment, and really trying to minimize all those effects on the environment. And yeah, just really improve your soils with fallow crops that can really hopefully improve your cane production when you put it back in. And yeah, just learning how to do those things as cheaply and efficient as possible is often the most profitable way, can be the most sustainable way if you know how to do it.
Yeah, definitely. James, do you mind, just for those that may not be aware, explaining what a fallow crop is and giving some examples of what fallow crops on your farm look like?
Yep. So fallow crop is just when sort of you might have grown cane on the land for 5 or 6 years, and the crop is starting to get a bit buggered, so you want to take it out. And then because you've been cropping repeatedly on that land for so long, it's good to just give it a break. And also when you give it a break, it's good to put in just another crop to just grow organic matter back into the soil. And obviously in cane, we use beans or cowpeas or sunflowers or sun hemp, just something that's quite different from grass. So it gives you a chance to also get rid of all the grass and kill out all your cane, to get rid of all your disease that's in the soil from the cane. And then the beans also put in things like nitrogen, which is just a bit of a natural form of nitrogen, which helps you be less reliant on fertilizer. And but the main point of a fallow is just trying to build the organic carbon in your soil. And yeah, hopefully every time you do a fallow, you always grow a better crop of cane the next year. And also sometimes if you can harvest, if there's like a grain harvester in your area or something. I know down in Bundaberg they do a lot of peanuts and soybeans, and it's like an extra little cash crop that they can get off it too. So if you can make that work, that works really well as well.
Awesome. Thanks heaps for that, James. That's fantastic. All right, Joel, I'm going to pass over to you. You do a lot of sustainability work in your role.
Yeah, well, the name suggests it. But yeah, so probably what Paul and James have already covered with the BMP. There's probably a lot of that helping growers to implement different practices and different ideas and things like that for the actual on-farm grower sustainability. And then also with like the Great Barrier Reef Foundation project, some of the delivery providers in that, we have one lot that's precision to decision projects. So they work with growers to implement nutrient management plans and do EM mapping of the soil and that, to see any soil variability, to help fine tune inputs. And also there's a water quality monitoring aspect of it too. So we've got 8 different real-time water quality monitors around the area, so we can sort of see what trends or if there is any impact on water quality. And also looking at now doing some sort of retention basins and first flush retention stuff as well. Yeah, so that's more the environmental aspect of it. Yeah.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you so much for sharing, Joel. That's fantastic. All right, the final question that I'm going to pitch to everyone before we open up to some questions from the audience is just, what advice would you give to young people interested in entering into a career in the sugar industry? So, James, I might start with you just to spice it up. If you're happy to go first and just share some advice.
Sure. If you have the opportunity to get some sort of tertiary education after school, that's just, as you know, Paul did environment, I did agriculture, you know, whatever but just something that might be slightly relatable. Any sort of tertiary education will probably help you, especially in the long run. And then, yeah, to get into, I would say definitely first try and get some firsthand real experience in the industry first before you dive into it. Whether it doesn't matter what position you're doing, but even if you're at the bottom or whatever, but just being able to talk to people that are in the industry and get those contacts. Just any work experience in the industry will be hugely beneficial to you, I think. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you for that. All right, Paul, I might pass to you.
Yep. I'm going to second what James said. I think work experience is extremely valuable. Like I said, you'll get great insights within a week or 2 weeks of working. While you might not get paid, you're going to learn a lot more than what that pay is going to be for a week or two anyway. It might hurt a little bit at the time to know that you're working for free, but in the long run, it's going to pay you off tenfold. I can guarantee it. We recently just had I recently had a work experience student with me about a month and a half ago. And she was here for 5 days, and I know that she learned a stack of things that she was unaware of. And she came from a cane farm. Her dad's a farmer. But working in this sort of a role, as opposed to strictly working on the farm, she learned a lot of things. And as a result, I know she's quite interested in following it up once she finishes school. Other things, yeah, tertiary education as well. For the kind of role that I'm in, it's necessary you've got to have a degree in an agricultural environmental type degree. Or something similar. But there's other roles where you don't necessarily need a degree if you're more interested in doing the farm work. Even at the organisation I'm at, we've got farm hands and the farm manager and people who don't necessarily need to have a degree. So it depends what avenue you're looking at getting into, really. Yeah, so that's...
Yeah, that's awesome. Thank you for that. And that's a great point, is that, there's so many different avenues and you don't have to know exactly what you want to do straight out of high school. And Joel is an excellent, had told an excellent story about a lot of the travels that he'd done prior to him finding the role that he's in today. And so, there's a lot of different avenues to get to where you want to go. But it is, it's really helpful if you do want to get into a role where you require, the specific expertise to have that tertiary training as well. So lots of different options. All right, Joel, I'm going to hand over to you next.
Yeah, agree with what everyone else has said so far. Depending on the role you want to go into, like Paul said, anything from sort of farmhand labourer right through trades, right up to, finance or other professional careers. Pretty well pick your career path and you'll find something within the sugar industry where it'll work. For me specifically, I did environmental science, but that was what was available at the time. I probably would have done ag science if that was an option to do it part-time or via distance. And like Paul said, for my specific role, one of those type of degrees or tertiary qualifications is fairly well necessary. But I think for people wanting to get into the industry, yeah, like everyone said, work experience or just getting in touch with different organisations and trying to find opportunities for, part-time employment or seasonal work, like that'll fit in hopefully around with what you're hands-on experience.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you heaps for that, Joel. Alrighty, I reckon what we might do is just open up to any questions that our audience may have. So you're welcome to pop those in the chat box now. And if you're comfortable doing so, you can pop your first name and the name of the school that you're at, or else the industry body that you're speaking from. And you can just direct any questions there, and then I can share those with our panelists and we can hear from them. So if any students have any questions that they'd like to know a little bit more about, whether it be about the pathways that they took there, whether it be about the places that they studied, life in a day-to-day role in the sugar industry, you're more than welcome to pop those into the chat box now. While we're waiting for those questions to roll in, I can just ask one last question to everyone, or whoever would like to jump in and answer. What's the most interesting or enjoyable part of your role? Oh, and hang on, no, we've got a better question. Elena from Year 12 Ag Prac, what are your thoughts on burning cane or cutting green? Ooh, good question.
Yeah.
And reasons why, please.
I'm sure Paul knows a lot too, but obviously the cutting green is really good because it leaves a good trash blanket on the top, so it really stops the weeds coming through. So that can help you on your chemical sprays as well, to be less reliant on your chemicals, and as well as also in the drier areas like in Mackay, and that the trash blanket actually sort of helps preserve sort of 2 megalitres of water a hectare. So it really actually, keeps the weeds down and helps keep some moisture in the soil. Sometimes the burning, I think one of the main things it's good for is It makes it easier for the harvester if it's a really big crop, and sometimes helps get rid of the rat problem, I think. But yeah, up here we're definitely better off with the green. It's been good.
Awesome. Thank you for that, James. Do we have any other questions from anyone curious to find out more? I'd like to know what the most interesting or enjoyable part of each of your roles is, if possible. Oh, hang on. No, I wouldn't, because we've got a better question. Rena would like to know, in the future, will we continually be faced with biosecurity threats? What measures do you think the industry will take to minimize these? Whoa, that is a great question.
Good question. All want to answer that.
Yeah, well, definitely. There's always going to be biosecurity threats coming all the time. We hear about them from time to time as they're coming. We've got at Sugar Research Australia, we've got entomologists, for example, who work with another organisation in Papua New Guinea, and they're looking, because Papua New Guinea is so close to us, obviously, they're looking at pests and diseases that are currently in Papua New Guinea that we don't want to arrive, but they're doing research so that if they do arrive, we know how to address the issue from day one, as opposed to spending a season trying to figure out what we are supposed to be trying to do with them. Meanwhile, they're just going to be getting more and more populous and expanding. So that's one thing that's already being done. Simple things like cleaning down machinery between farms is a crucial one. It's one that it happens now. There's more research going on to better assist that clean down process, because it can be quite difficult, especially when it comes time to harvest. Harvesters are under the pump; they're paid on their time, basically. So it's something that's got to be as efficient as possible. Just people trying to stay ahead of the game, I suppose, is how we're going to deal with the biosecurity threats. So yeah, it's collaborative with international organisations. That's the best way to face it, I believe.
Awesome. Thank you for that, Paul. That's really interesting. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense about the work that they're doing in PNG. That's really cool. We have one more question. So if we want to be more renewable, what changes will we need to do in the Burdekin to our machinery and our mills to cope with the trash, etc.?
Does Joel want to go? What?
Yeah.
Just throw Joel the hardest question.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the Burdekin's a lot different area to where we are in the wet tropics here. Even if you look at their sort of district yield potentials and the sort of tons they cut under their environmental conditions, it's a fair bit higher than the wet tropics here. So like as James alluded to before, with those big crops and that, it is sort of easier to burn and does make it probably a more efficient job of harvesting it too, if you've got big leafy crops and that type of thing. So yeah, I'm not sure. I suppose like a lot of things, there's a lot of different angles to sort of look at there, like machinery efficiency and that too. If by burning you sort of, this isn't my area of expertise, like I said, the Burdekin. So, but just saying, yeah, you got to think about machinery efficiencies and things like that. So if by burning, you're actually cutting that crop in a more efficient manner, maybe the gains from the machinery efficiency outweigh what you might be getting at with some of the more negative or less renewable aspects of burning. So yeah, you sort of got to look at that whole life cycle analysis of which way is better for certain things.
I got one little factor to point out in there as well, not machinery wise, but more about farm practices. If we can make growing the crops as efficient as possible and reduce the limiting factors to nutrient uptake, it also means that the fertilizer that you do put onto your crop is going to be utilized. There's less chance for that, say your nitrogen and whatnot, to be lost through runoff or other avenues. So if you can, to become more renewable, one of the key things to do is to be growing with the absolute best practices that are available. Because one, you're not going to waste your money, but two, you're not going to have the environmental impacts. As a result, your cane's going to be bigger. because it's going to be taking up more of those nutrients, and you're not going to have those losses, which are at the forefront of a lot of people's minds. And it's a key one that is monitored quite a lot as well.
Awesome. Thank you for that. Thank you. They were very interesting. So it is very difficult for our students to get on farms. This is our lovely teacher that's joining us today. Can there be a bank of contacts for schools to access? These farmers need to be willing to have young people and do the appropriate workplace health and safety with them. So I wonder if that would be an option.
Can I just ask, this is more Burdekin based with the school in particular?
Yes.
Yeah, it's a tricky one with the people we've got on the panel, because me, for example, I don't work in the Burdekin, so while I could potentially help out locally, yeah, my district doesn't actually cross paths down there.
That's something that we could definitely pose and chat to our cane growers members, though, and see potentially down the line if that's something that could be made available just for students to have the opportunity even to get out on farms and get that firsthand experience and understanding, you know, the conditions and different farm management practices. So yes, it's definitely something that we can all have a think about and have a discuss down the line for sure.
Yeah, I think the local cane growers office would be probably a good place to start anyway for that sort of exercise.
Yeah, definitely.
And there's Sugar Research Australia stations down there as well. I'm unsure exactly what their situation with is taking work experience students, but it's definitely worth, if there's anyone that's really keen, it's worth contacting them and letting them know and seeing if they are willing to help out in that regard.
Awesome. Yeah, definitely. Thank you for that. Any more questions from our audience? Oh, we've got one more. Shellin would like to know who the other people are on the chat, their roles and responsibilities. Great question. So we have a cane growers member, the lovely Shakira, who I work with very closely. She's the PIEFA cane growers liaison. Hey Shakira. We've got Ingrid, who is another PIEFA team member down the bottom there, or down the bottom of my screen. We've got Claire, who I believe is Joel's wife. Yes. And I don't know Anne personally, but we're very grateful to have her as well. All right. Well, if we don't have any more student questions, I will come back to my last question that had a few failed attempts. I'd love to know what the most interesting or enjoyable parts of each of your roles are, and then I think we'll wrap up for the day. So, Joel, if you'd like to go first with that one.
Yeah. I think most interesting thing is just getting out and talking to the growers, being out on farm, and just all the different personalities and people you talk to on a day-to-day basis. So pretty well no 2 days are the same type of thing. That's probably the most enjoyable part I find, yeah.
Awesome. Thanks, Joel. Paul, how about you?
Yeah, I definitely agree with Joel on that one. Just getting out to see different growers and feel like you're actually helping them improve what they're doing, if you can be of that service. But also, one of the best things about my job, I think, is it's a fairly good split between office work and field work. So for an hour and a half before this interview started, I had a small break where I didn't have anything going on, so I just ducked out and I had to do a few soil samples. I just filled in an hour and a half that way, which means I get to be outside for a bit. Sitting on a computer all day drives me a bit mad if I do that for too long. So yeah, you get to get outside quite a lot. You're usually surrounded by mountains and cane and blue skies, depending on which part of the area you're in. Blue skies anyway. And yeah, just getting out and talking to different growers and finding out what their issues are, what you might be able to help with. Recently, I went on a trip. James was on it as well. We went down to Brisbane for a young growers trip. We learned a lot of things. There's quite a lot of things actually. It's hard to roll down just into one.
Yeah, awesome. That's great. It's pretty good if you can't pinpoint the most enjoyable or interesting thing, because there's so many. That's awesome. All right, James, I'm going to pass over to you.
Yeah, my most enjoyable thing is probably just being able to work with my dad and my dog every day. just being close to nature, driving the tractor, watching the birds. The other day I saw a massive 3.5, nearly 4 meter crocodile on the bank the other day on the river. And I get to go fishing on the farm. So those are probably my favorite thing about it, is just being outdoors all the time and being close to nature. Yeah.
Yeah, fantastic. What a way to live. That's
Yeah.
awesome. Are you afraid of the crocodiles? Like, did you get close to it out of curiosity?
I was probably 10 or 20 meters away. The main thing I obviously just know you can't put a toe in that water. There's just that many in the Russell River, it seems, because I see one nearly every day. At least a baby anyway. But yeah, the main thing I worry about is my dogs. Is just trying to keep them, making sure they don't go in the bloody river.
Yeah, fair enough.
Yeah.
That's awesome. All right. Well, I would like to say a massive, massive thank you to all three of our panelists for joining us today and sharing their insights about their career experience and their pathways to getting there. I'd like to say a huge thank you to Louisa's class for joining us today. Thank you so much, everyone. It was fantastic to hear your questions and have you with us. And a huge thank you to cane growers, who we wouldn't have been able to facilitate this session without all of their help. So thank you so, so much, everyone, for your time.